The number of COVID-19 cases in Hong Kong tops 900. At least 5 of the 65 Hong Kong returnees from Peru test positive for the coronavirus. And in the UK, Boris Johnson admitted to hospital due to a persistent fever. Hello and a very good evening. The city's total number of COVID-19 cases surpassed the 900 mark today after 24 more infections were recorded. Sharon Tang has our top story.
Most of the newly confirmed cases have a travel history. The patients include several students who recently returned from overseas and a domestic helper who travelled to the UK with her employer. Some other patients tested positive for the virus after returning from Japan, Nigeria and Argentina. Among the local infections, a male staff member of Marks & Spencer at Windsor House in Causewaybay. He and his co-workers have visited the CEO Neway karaoke hall in Causewaybay.
He usually eats with a few colleagues, but they had a farewell with a colleague on 25th of March with, I think, 5 to 6 colleagues together. We plan to send all these close contacts to the quarantine center, but I understand maybe 1 or 2 of them develop symptoms. That's why they won't be sent to the quarantine center. They will be sent to the hospital for testing.
The man's wife had earlier tested positive for the virus, but her source of infection was unknown. The 48-year-old man started having a runny nose last month and had been wearing face masks while at work. Health authorities have urged members of the public with mild respiratory symptoms to see a doctor as soon as possible and try to stay away from work. Also reported today are 5 more cases stemming from the band cluster in Lan Kwai Fong. They include 2 boys, aged 3 and 8 respectively. Their mom, who worked at the all-night-long bar in Tsim Sha Tsui, was earlier confirmed with COVID-19. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Meanwhile, at least 5 people among these 65 Hong Kongers who arrived in the city yesterday from Peru have tested positive for COVID-19. Pinky Wong has that story.
Authorities confirmed that 5 from the group have been infected with COVID-19. Officials believe they contracted the disease in Peru.
There are a total of 65 returnees from Peru, and 21 of them joined a tour by the Star Travel Service. Some of them joined the 24 days tour and to the Brazil, Argentina, Chile and Peru. 3 of them among this tour group have been confirmed. So the rest of the 18 travelers who went together in the tour group members will be quarantined in the quarantine center. Another friends who went there for travel alone, and they did not join other tours and other Peru returnees. They did not mix with them. So there are no other close contacts among these 2 cases.
The remaining people who tested negative can go home or to a designated place for their 14-day compulsory quarantine. It took some 15 hours before the group got their test results at the testing center at Asia World Expo. Some were satisfied with the arrangements despite some problems.
Initially, the Chinese government did not want to give me a permit to leave, but I was able to get one from the South African embassy, and I used that permit to get to the plane. You know, when I arrived, things were extremely well managed. They put us through a very efficient process. They gave us a clean place to stay for the night. They informed us well what was going on, and they've given us our quarantine certificate. You know, I'm from South Africa. I think in that country they struggle much more. They don't have the resources, they don't have the organization.
However, some were not pleased with the arrangements.
The
situation was not ideal. I was only some 10 meters away from one confirmed patient. There weren't any partitions, so I'm a bit worried, this local said. He also expressed concerns on a possible spread of the virus from those who were on the same connecting flight with them from London. They were put under quarantine but not tested. Currently, at least 4 Hong Kong residents are required to stay in Peru for quarantine and undergo COVID-19 testing. The government noted that they will continue to follow up with relevant authorities to assist the Hong Kongers. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
The mainland reported 39 more coronavirus infections yesterday. As more than half of them were imported cases from Russia, Heilongjiang will close its road links along the border with Russia starting tomorrow. Meanwhile, a countdown to the unlocking of Wuhan, once the epicenter of the pandemic, on Wednesday. Local officers were seen removing barricades that were used to seal off wet markets. Stall owners reopened for businesses. Provincial authorities say while people have been waiting for the end of the lockdown, everyone should still remain vigilant and anti-pandemic measures will continue. Japan is expected to declare a state of emergency as early as tomorrow as the number of COVID-19 infections in the country keeps rising. More than 3,500 people have tested positive for the coronavirus, while at least 85 people have died. Over in India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi joined millions of Indians in switching off their lights for 9 minutes at 9 p.m. on Sunday. Citizens lit candles, lamps or flashlights to express resilience during the coronavirus pandemic. Many clapped, burst firecrackers, rang bells, blew conch shells and lit lamps outside their homes. They were responding to a call by Modi for a gesture of solidarity to progress toward light and hope amidst the darkness spread by the pandemic. In the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson was taken to hospital to deal with COVID-19 symptoms more than a week after he contracted the virus. Meanwhile, Queen Elizabeth made a rare television speech and urged people to stay at home. Peter Caveas has details.
Vulnerable person.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was admitted to hospital as a precaution. He continues to show symptoms of COVID-19 since testing positive 10 days ago. Downing Street says he remains in charge of the government. Meanwhile, Queen Elizabeth delivered a rare national address and appealed to Britons to unite as COVID-19 cases surge.
I'm speaking to you at what I know is an increasingly challenging time. I also want to thank those of you who are staying at home, thereby helping to protect the vulnerable and sparing many families the pain already felt by those who have lost loved ones. Together we are tackling this disease, and I want to reassure you that if we remain united and resolute, then we will overcome it.
This is only the 5th time the Queen has delivered a special televised address in her 68-year royal reign, apart from her Christmas messages. Meanwhile, the country's health minister warned the UK might ban outdoor exercises if people continue to flout social distancing rules.
You're risking your own life and the lives of others, and you're making it harder for us all. We've included exercise as one of the things that you can leave your house to do, because exercise is good for our physical and our mental health. But please do not bend or break this rule. We can't rule out further steps.
The Chief Medical Officer for Scotland, Catherine Calderwood, apologised for ignoring her own policy and visiting her second home, despite government advice to stay home to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Police gave her a warning, and she resigned on Sunday. Vatican City's famous St. Peter's Square was empty on Palm Sunday as Pope Francis held his traditional Mass indoors and without the public amid coronavirus fears. Italy's daily death toll was at its lowest in more than 2 weeks, and its infection curve was finally on a downward slope. There were 525 deaths in the 24-hour period since Saturday evening, the lowest such figure since 427 deaths were registered March 19th. Italy has almost 16,000 deaths and nearly 129,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases. Spain's confirmed new virus deaths dropped for the 3rd straight day to 674, the first time the daily death toll has fallen below 800 in the past week. Peter Caveos, TVB News.
Another dire warning that the United States could see a grim surge in deaths from the coronavirus outbreak, this time from a senior medical official. Still, US President Donald Trump expressed hope that the number of cases could soon be leveling off in some of the worst hit places. After Donald Trump, it was the turn of the US Surgeon General to warn of a difficult week or two ahead for the United States.
The next week is going to be our Pearl Harbor moment. It's going to be our 9/11 moment.
America's infectious disease chief warned that the coronavirus may never be completely eradicated from the globe. It was some of the most grim assessments yet for the immediate future and beyond. But later in the day, Trump and Vice President Mike Pence tried to strike more optimistic tones, suggesting that the hard weeks ahead could also mean the worst could soon be behind America.
I think we all know that we have to reach a certain point, and that point is going to be a horrific point in terms of death, but it's also a point at which things are going to start changing. We're getting very close to that level right now. Things are happening. We're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully in the not too distant future we'll be very proud of the job we all did.
The number of people infected in the United States has exceeded 337,000, with the death toll climbing past 9,600. More than 4,100 of these deaths are in the state of New York. While the number of deaths in the state is significant, Governor Andrew Cuomo indicated a slowdown in the mortality rate. The U.S. Navy aircraft carrier captain who was fired over an email he sent about an outbreak of the coronavirus on board his ship has himself tested positive for the virus. According to the New York Times, Captain Brett Crozier started showing symptoms of the virus before he was relieved of his command of the USS Theodore Roosevelt. The U.S. Navy has defended its decision to fire Crozier as commander of the virus-stricken aircraft carrier, saying he did not follow protocol when he sent out his email. Ukrainian firefighters labored into the night trying to put out 2 forest fires in the area around the Chernobyl nuclear power station. Firefighters backed by planes were sent to the area to combat the blazes. Officials say the burning is causing elevated radiation levels. The area around the nuclear station has been evacuated because of the radioactive contamination from the 1986 explosion at the plant. The fires are within the 2,600 square kilometre Chernobyl exclusion zone, which was established after the disaster. The zone is largely unpopulated, although about 200 people have remained despite orders to leave. And still ahead on the news tonight. Former lawmaker Al Nok-hin found guilty of assaulting police officers with a loudspeaker. Medical consultation service using teleconferencing technology in Hong Kong. And in France, research on the use of worm blood to help treat COVID-19 patients. And a warm welcome back to TVB News. Former lawmaker Al Nok-hin was found guilty of assaulting 2 police officers with a loudspeaker during an anti-government protest last year. Dong Yang has the details.
Al Nok-hin appeared at the Kowloon City Magistracy this afternoon. The court heard that in the early hours of July 8th, Al, a legislator at the time, struck a police officer's shield with a loudspeaker in Mongkok. Al also allegedly yelled into the microphone, damaging the hearing of a public relations officer. Magistrate Leung Ka-ki cited from an officer's statement, saying he was shocked while tightly gripping his shield. She added the level of force and number of times that Al knocked on his shield may have caused the officer to think that he would fall and break the cordon line. As for the officer whose hearing was damaged, the magistrate noted the officer had already pushed aside Al's speaker multiple times, urging him to stop. That means the extent to which Al was using the speaker surpassed the acceptance level of the officer. He was convicted on 2 counts of assaulting a police officer. During mitigation, the defense counsel noted Al was only worried about clashes between the police and the public, and that's why he acted in the way he was accused. Also, Al only hit the officer's shield and did not make any bodily contact with the policeman. The court has adjourned Al's sentencing until April 24th, pending his community service report. In the meantime, Al has been granted bail.
With finishing the whole legal procedures, I hope the judge would consider all of the circumstances much more precisely so that a much more fair result will come.
He added he will wait for sentencing before deciding whether or not to file an appeal. Dong Yaonie, TVB News.
4 people arrested after a recent car chase in the New Territories appeared at Sha Tin Magistracy today. Police opened fire before making the arrest last Friday. The defendants are aged between 16 and 27. 2 of them are secondary school students. They face 1 joint count of robbery. The prosecution told the court that they had robbed Cheng Quan of $1,000 and his car in Lao Fao Shan on April the 3rd. One of the defendants, 18-year-old Chan Koi-yu, faces 3 additional charges of dangerous driving, driving without a license, and driving without third-party insurance. The magistrate adjourned the case until next Tuesday, and all 4 defendants were denied bail. Sources say the police have, for the first time, issued fixed penalty tickets to people suspected of violating the new rule limiting public gatherings to 4 people. The police reportedly received a complaint yesterday afternoon that people were gathering outside a building at Kwai Shing Estate East, and gambling activities were suspected. Police officers sent there found 6 men playing chess together, and they told them to leave. The men defied the police order, and the officers gave each of them a fixed penalty notice of $2,000. The men still refused to leave until the police gave them a second warning. Some public hospitals and the Hospital Authority's Kowloon East cluster have piloted an online consultation scheme. This as medical services at public hospitals have been scaled down since February to concentrate manpower on tackling the COVID-19 pandemic. Haley Joe reports.
Hello.
Hello.
25-year-old Kwa Kyu-tong received a lip surgery in a public hospital in January. Amid the ongoing coronavirus outbreak, she was worried her follow-up consultations could be delayed. The wound around my lips sometimes turns red, but I don't have any other problems. It's okay. It's normal to become a bit red when blood vessels grow, says Dr. Peter Koo, sitting in a room at United Christian Hospital. The patient is one of the first 20 selected by the Ear, Nose and Throat Division in the Kowloon East cluster last month to see their doctors online using video conferencing technology. Public hospitals have cut back their non-essential services to concentrate manpower on tackling the pandemic. The hospital authority said there could be a further cut to services if the pandemic continues. Some people say they're reluctant to go to hospitals where they may face higher chances of exposing themselves to the virus. But Dr. Koo says online consultation service is suitable only for patients in a stable condition who do not require any equipment for checkups. This service has now been extended to other departments such as psychiatry and anesthesia. For privacy protection, online meetings will not be recorded. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
Well, could worm blood help treat COVID-19 patients? Doctors in France hope that this is the case. A pair of hospitals in Paris will start tests using the blood of sandworms, also known as lugworms. The creatures can breathe on land and water, and their blood can store oxygen for up to 6 hours between tides. Doctors want to inject their molecules into human blood to see if they can oxygenate tissue. A similar test was performed on kidney transplant patients and improved the oxygen levels of the organs. The experiment will be performed on patients with severe respiratory distress in which oxygen is not reaching their tissue.
So our principle is to try to use it in the ARDS, the pulmonary infection. In this event, there is very low oxygen that gets through the lungs to the blood. Our hypothesis is that if we put this molecule in the veins, then it will capture more oxygen and diffuse more oxygen to the body. We hope that using this molecule, the patient would have less time in ICU and less time with a ventilator.
And that is the main news for Monday night. We'll have a news update later this evening. Bye for now.